I'm Jacky Sheridan. I'm an illustrator based here in Belfast. I've been based here in Belfast for the last decade practically, but I'm originally from Dublin, as you can probably vaguely hear from my muddled accent. I'm part of UsFolk, which is the only agency in Ireland at the moment, I think, for illustration. I've been a part of it since it started 4 years ago now. Yeah, I was going to say close to 5. And it's great, yeah. I love being an illustrator in Belfast. My work is, it's kind of half and half. Like my bread and butter is advertising and branding, realistically. I do a lot of typographic work. But then whenever I actually do get a chance, I love making personal work about various causes close to my heart, like women's rights and queer rights and all that kind of jazz. So,
I'm Fiona McDonnell, so I'm also a freelance illustrator based in Belfast. I'm actually born and raised in Belfast. I studied in England to get my degree in illustration, but then came back to Belfast afterwards, and shortly after that I also joined UsFolk illustration agency at the start. And as well as being a freelance illustrator based here, I'm also the agency manager for UsFolk, so I kind of do split my time between my own freelance practice and then also running the agency. So that's one of the really nice things about UsFolk as well, is that not only are we like a collective of illustrators who support each other, the agency is run by illustrators, so we kind of always have the illustrators' best intentions at heart. And then in terms of my freelance work, I kind of do a little bit of everything. Like, I don't think there's one area of illustration I mainly work in, but I would do a lot of editorial, like promotional work. I do a little bit of advertising sometimes as well, print. But posters are kind of like my bread and butter, I guess. They're like the things I love doing. So I do a lot of posters again for events to do with causes I care about, and then I would do a lot of work for exhibitions in a similar sort of vein, mainly focusing around like similar issues like, you know, representation, like LGBTQ like sort of causes, women's rights, reproductive rights, and all those things that I think are quite important.
So why did you start illustrating?
I think kind of similar for a lot of people who do illustration. Like whenever I was younger, I loved drawing.
Yeah.
Like it was like my favorite thing to do. I really enjoyed it. My parents were like really encouraging in that sense. Like, you know, my ma always had like paints, clay, Play-Doh, like everything. We were allowed to draw on the walls in our house.
Class, that was the dream. I was never allowed.
I think she really regretted it at some point, but you know, it was great for us when we were kids. But I think what I liked about illustration is that it had a real purpose to it. Because I was particularly into like animation and comics, like that sort of thing when I was a kid, and they were like big influences on me. So I think they definitely lean more towards that kind of like, you're creating a visual piece of art essentially, but it definitely has boundaries or like purpose to it.
I mean, mine's pretty much the same. Like, I'm one of these stubborn people that if I'm not immediately good at something, I don't care and I won't do it. So I was immediately good at drawing, like ever since I was a kid. And I actually did graphic design originally because a lot of my work is so typographic. I think I've always had that affinity with typography. Like even from I would like meticulously copy out like band logos into my like school journal. I think that was like the start of that for me. But so yeah, I did graphic design, and then I literally got into uni and was like, oh, illustration's a thing. Sack you, graphic design. Stuff that I do now, I've totally applied design principles that I've learned from graphic design and my graphic design education to my illustration now, and it's handy, you know. I'm so jealous of kids these days because like it's a thing to them immediately. They know from when they're like 12 that they could be an illustrator, whereas I had no idea. Like, this wasn't a job. I was like, oh, that's cool. Well, like, I mean, the definition, I'm just talking about illustration now, but the definition of illustration is to distill something complex, whether that be a message or an idea or whatever else, brief, into a simple visual. So I don't see it, like, obviously that's important. It's like a global language. Like, it's basically semiotics. Like, it, you know, a stop sign is technically illustration, but like people see the hexagon, or whatever shape that is anyway, and the red, and they know what it is. So I think illustration is the same. It's just, it looks a bit prettier.
I think the big thing about it is the accessibility aspect. I think illustration, this kind of like visual language that you see coming out now, that is a lot more illustration led. The reason that it's blown up and you see so much of it online and even just in advertising now and in all these kind of sectors is because anyone can respond to it. Like, it's a picture, like we grow up seeing pictures our whole lives, but there's something more to it, because ultimately, like, an illustrator is still someone with like their own independent voice and their own kind of thing to say, but it's presented in a way that I think illustrators want people to be able to consume their work and enjoy their work.
Okay, so what motivates you to use your illustration as a way of helping out causes that are like important to you?
I suppose there's like lots of reasons to it. Like, it's something on the surface you just feel compelled to do, in the sense that I'm like, I care about this cause, this is something I can do, I'm going to do it. But I guess if you want to like dig a bit deeper into it, like, you know, whenever I was quite young, like a teenager, like let's say I was like cripplingly shy, like, you know, really shy, not confident in myself at all, like wouldn't have shown my picture to my ma even, like, you know, it was so like, because you're so afraid of like sharing that in a way.
Yeah.
But then whenever I moved to university, I'm so grateful that I ended up meeting a lot of people who were heavily involved in like a DIY kind of like punk music scene that extended more into like, you know, art, film, like theatre, like all these group of people were making work, and that was the first time I was ever exposed to something where people were like, there's so much value in just like making work for the sake of it because you care about it. But also in that kind of circle, like, you know, personal politics were quite important, and being an activist was quite important, and you're really encouraged. Like, a big part of that ethos is like helping each other out and helping other people out, and like, you know, doing it together and fostering that kind of sense like of, yeah, just like activism in general, and how one person can actually make a difference, and then if we all do something together we can make a difference. And I think that like really was quite like a defining moment in my life, I guess, because it did so much for me. Like, being in that group with those group of people gave me such confidence that I then wanted to almost like pay that back in a way. I was like, well, these people and this experience have done so much for me, like how can I then pass that on to somebody else? So again, I like to make work to like raise money for different causes. I like to donate posters to like events that raise money for good causes. You know, even just in general, like to me it's almost like a way of giving back to something that was given to me in a way.
Community is like definitely an aspect, I think, of like what would motivate any artist to make art, really. Like your sense of community definitely is a drive there. I think with me as well, what kind of motivates me most, and it's like a much less soppy answer than yours, to be honest. Yours is much nicer. Yeah, yours is much nicer. Mine is just, do you know what? I'd love to be heavily involved in activism. I would love to be on the ground and get to do that stuff, but I'm a freelancer. I have no free time, like very, very little free time, and I don't have the time to commit to being on the ground in person, like, you know, like promoting causes. It's just like something that I can lend my talents to, and it doesn't necessarily take away from the very, very limited free time I have anyway. Yeah. So I'm time poor and I'm art rich. Yeah.
Particularly with like activism, let's say, like, you know, everyone has something they can bring to it.
Yeah, of course.
And you shouldn't feel pressured. Like, activism isn't just like going out and shouting.
No.
And that there's definitely a place for that and a need for that kind of direct action. But I think if people realise that, like, okay, if you're good at making cupcakes, make a bunch of cupcakes and donate them to like a bake sale. That money goes towards like,
yeah, fully.
You know, whatever cause you care about. Like, you know, whatever you feel like you have to bring to it. And maybe that is just going to a protest, maybe that is just signing a petition online.
Yeah.
Like, that all makes a difference. So I think, yeah, it's that thing, like, whatever you have to offer, and what we have to offer is
art.
You know, and we're good at it. Like, of course you want to like
help out in that way. Yeah.
So one would be the piece I made for the UsFolk Mood Board exhibition in 2019. So we had our beautiful studio on Queen Street. It was a really old building, but we had to leave because the building had been sold.
Yes.
And we needed to find somewhere else. But we decided then for our last exhibition to call it the Mood Board, because we wanted to theme the work around the idea of like January blues, like how do you overcome or deal with those kind of feelings, and also like letting people understand that everybody feels like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I decided to make a piece around the idea of like bad habits and trying to break bad habits, like anything that's like self-deprecating, or like even just trying to like smoke less, and then things I wanted to get into good habits with, so like, you know, learning how to play an instrument, like, you know, making more work for myself. So I love the theme of it, and there's like a sentimental attachment to like the actual event, but also the piece of work itself, I think, I'd done something a little bit different I'd never done before. That was kind of like a bit of a eureka moment for me, and
Yeah.
like, you know, playing around with like the style of work I work in, how I lay things out, that I actually ended up using a lot of after that.
Let me think. Proud is a hard one because you know yourself whenever you're an illustrator. Obviously, client work. Sometimes it's your work, and sometimes you are proud of it, and sometimes it's absolutely not your work, and it's just something you've done for a job. But it's a really good client.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think it's okay to be part of that in a sense.
yeah. I think, do you know what? Probably actually some of the stuff which happened to be a really good client and obviously had a lot of creative freedom in was some of the prints that I made whenever I was in Facebook, whenever I was doing the residency there. Probably when the risograph prints, you know, the one that it was based on like a Kurt Vonnegut quote, and it was this is nice basically, and it was, you know, it's the one where you're like, it's just basically me lying in bed and I have a wee cat and he's coming up and like pawing up to me, and there's like the Divis Towers in the background, despite me living nowhere near Divis.
I think that work was so nice because it was very much about like, in a way, like sometimes just those simple things are lovely, and I think it's good to kind of like show that side of it.
Yeah, fully. It was just like a nice print.
So one of them is the 2 illustrations I did for Room for Rebellion in the run up to the Republican movement.
Yeah.
So I think, so partly because of what the work was for, it was about, you know, supporting Room for Rebellion, which was like a movement that did a couple of like, you know, music nights to like raise money for the Repeal Youth movement.
Yeah.
And I really like the illustrations because I think they really summed up a feeling at the time. Like I still look at them now and I'm like, yeah, I think I actually did really capture like the sentiment that was there, and I'm really proud of them, and even in a technical sense, also in an emotional sense about what it was for.
Yeah.
And they ended up actually, Anna Kafula, who's a really amazing like editor and like writer, used them in a series of articles she was writing around the Repeal Youth movement and how different groups and different forms of art, I guess, were like helping spur on the movement. So that was really cool to be a part of that.
Probably, funnily enough, that one I did for that Threes Theatre play, the Now for the North. It was a poster I did for a play, which was a really amazing play, to be fair. It was directed by Anna Leckie, and she did some really, really amazing work on it. But it was basically actors telling actual stories of how people have had abortions and had to travel for abortions. It ended up going viral, and it ended up basically being put up everywhere in Belfast. Yeah, it's probably the one that had the most impact, I think, that I can think of. What about you?
Actually, a really recent piece. So I recently did a risograph print run of prints of like different pedals with Irish slang on them, which was really fun. But I sold the prints and like was going to donate all the money to the Black Box, which is like an amazing venue in Belfast. Like, I could wax lyrical for ages about how important the work they do is and how amazing the people who work there are, and like, but they're one of the venues who are definitely under threat due to like the COVID-19 lockdown and the lack of support for the arts. So I decided I want to like donate all the money to them because like they have a really special place in my heart, and the prints sold out in less than a day, like really quickly, and I was able to donate like quite a lot of money to them. And even whenever I donated that amount of money to them, it felt really nice because I was like, I could never afford to do this myself. But it's amazing, and it was just amazing to see how quickly people bought the print and how quickly people wanted to like help out, and to see like how it sort of helped them, and they were so grateful, and it was just a really lovely experience.
So what would your advice be to any kind of creative who wants to start using their art for activist causes?
Honestly, just do it. It's a cause you really care about. Well, not really care about, but if it's a cause that you think is important, the work will just come naturally. And like, don't try and like censor yourself, and don't try and overthink it. Like, just make the work and share it, and also just reach out to organisations who you think are doing good work and just offer to help them. Because you'll find they'll probably jump at the chance. So
fully. I'm basically the same. The personal is political. Like, anything that you do care about, jump into it, lean into it, and make art about it. It doesn't matter if it's for anyone but yourself. Just create.
Just do it.
Hi there, how's it going? My name's Conor Scott. I'm a singer-songwriter from Belfast, and this is a video for my latest single called Overthinking, which came out in May this year. It was released in the height of lockdown, so you'll see it's quite a lockdown isolation style video. Myself and all my friends filming and recording from afar to put this together. It's the first single that we released this year, with a couple more to be coming out, as well as an EP towards the end of this year, starting next year. I hope you enjoy. Thank you very much.
This is Belfast. I live here. It isn't the easiest place to live all the time. It's not the hardest. I love it here. It isn't the easiest place to live. Sometimes when you say you love it here, it feels a bit like a guilty pleasure. What is that? I mean, butter and digestives is a guilty pleasure. Picking your hole, guilty pleasure. Nickelback, guilty pleasure. Why is loving here a guilty pleasure? Maybe it's because you worry that here doesn't love you back. I mean, we all grow, we all change, we all become different people, and the world changes with us too. But sometimes it feels that here doesn't change, which is weird. It's strange being gaslit by a whole country. You see, hear it all the time. This is how things have always been. You have to wait for change, you have to be patient, you have to want things for tomorrow, not for today. And sure, if you don't like it, you can always leave. But then why leave here when you can maybe stay and be part of the change, even in some small way? For all its faults and foibles, its cracks and crags, while we live here, this is home. And when we dream about the future, it's here that those dreams are set. Our future, our shared future. Our shared future is a term which is a massive governmental guilty pleasure as well, because everybody says it and nobody knows what it means. But it is our future. And in it, we're not bystanders. Our movements cause ripples and waves and reactions and abstractions. And consequence and action are only different sides of the fence when you're on it. I always say, I don't make the rules, I just follow them, for the main part. But if no one knows, then why don't we? If nobody knows who makes the rules, then why don't we make them for ourselves? It can be really hard imagining things here being different, imagining change. But then all of a sudden something happens, and you realise that actually, every single day, we all have the possibility to do something that changes the city for the better, that changes the country for the better, that changes the world for the better. We all have that power. At night, sometimes, if you stand really still, if you barely breathe and you look straight up, it can seem that the night sky changes overhead. You can imagine stars veering off their course and meteors knocking planets out of orbit. And it's chaos. And it's change. But it's distant. Whereas here, it can feel like a fixed point. But when you look down, when you really put your ear to the ground, you can hear the thumping, you can feel the movement of it all. And you realise this is not a fixed point. We're literally hurtling through space at 1,000 miles an hour. We're part of all that possibility, part of all that change. And maybe the world spins that little bit faster if enough people run the same way, and maybe the world changes that bit quicker if we all wanted to, and if we act on that want. It's a decision. Staying is a decision. Every night we go to bed in the city, we make that choice again to stay and maybe be part of that change. It doesn't mean that it isn't scary, it doesn't mean that it can't be frustrating, it doesn't mean that it'll be easy. But if we do it together, maybe that's okay, because we can do it together. The distance between us, it isn't measured in meters, it's determined by sightlines. So when we see each other, look out for each other, speak up for each other, maybe we can create a world for each other where no one's left behind. Each of us has the power to strike a note that can change the world. And notes are strong, but chords are stronger. Loving here doesn't always have to be a guilty pleasure. Things here don't always have to be the same. We don't just have to want everything for the future. We can butter our digestives and eat them. We can want everything now.
Shut my mouth, 'cause I don't know what might come out, and I'd run away right now if it was okay. My tired bones keep trying to stay afloat, but I'm not so sure that I could find the strength. I need some room to breathe, 'cause I'm getting tired of holding my breath, and I don't know how to feel when I'm in the bed that I've made for myself. Constant noise, I'm sorry I can't hear much. My deafening fears are still keeping me awake. With my shoulders back, don't show them I'm falling flat. for myself. I can't make sense of what is real when I'm not here, and I'm not here. I have forgotten how it feels to be so free when I'm not free. And I'm just a mountain caving in after all this time. I have broken myself down, and I need some room to breathe, 'cause I'm getting tired of holding my breath, and I don't know how to feel when I'm in the bed that I've made for myself. I need some room to breathe, 'cause I'm getting tired